Hi everyone! Time for your week 7 wake up call. Here's your course schedule. We're moving into a different topic today or this week in cosmic myths, and I'm super excited about this because I think it's really, really interesting from both a mythological and scientific viewpoint. And also, I have some great projects for you to work on. So anyway, we're going to be talking about flood myths. So start out the week, obviously just the way you are by listening to this wake-up call. Then you'll be working out of Module 3, Week 7, and you have a discussion post. Part of it is due Thursday, and then the peer response is due on Sunday. So, what exactly are flood myths? I mean, you already know because each and every one of you is probably very familiar with Noah's Ark. Maybe you even had a little wooden Noah's Ark when you were a kid and had little wooden animals. And so this is really a big part of our Western culture, that particular story out of Genesis. But what a lot of you may not know or really appreciate is that virtually every culture on the planet has some sort of flood myth, just hundreds and hundreds of them. And in many ways, they are eerily similar. So we're going to be talking about that as well. So in a nutshell, a flood myth, sometimes called a deluge myth, is a story in which some powerful deity or a group of deities sends a cataclysmic flood, some sort of water event, to destroy an entire civilization. Oftentimes there is one person or a small group of people that are the survivors of this particular deluge. And it's often explained as an act of divine retribution or cleansing because this civilization has lost its way. It's become sinful. It's doing bad things. And so the deity has no choice but to sort of erase the slate and start over again. So the flood is seen as this cleansing event where all of the bad goes away and only the good is left, this tiny seed of goodness, which then will spring forth a better, more, more well-behaving civilization. Here's your work for this week. The first one there, flood myths, this is actually the Wikipedia article, and please read the entire thing. It's got good information that you're going to need later on. I have another reading for you. It actually is another encyclopedic entry. That one, though, is particularly interesting because it just gives you a sort of a representative sample of flood myths from around the world. So please read every myth on that page. I have a couple of Crash Course Mythology videos for you there that will continue to elaborate on this idea of floods. And then you have discussion number 5, floods then and now. So let's take a look and see what your discussion entails. This one is a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more involved than some of your previous ones. And so because of that, it's worth 20 points, but that also means that you have to get started on it. You can't just wait around until the last minute. So part 1A asks you to think about some of the aspects of flood myths. So what is one purpose that floods serve in a myth? Now there's more than one, but there is really one overarching purpose. Think in terms of what the deity is trying to accomplish with this flood. Why do scholars believe that floods are such a common subject in world mythology? So what explains these similarities from around the world and throughout time? And what scientific evidence exists that disproves the evidence of a worldwide deluge? So there are people that would use the fact that there are so many of these flood myths as evidence that yes, there was one worldwide cataclysm, just the way that we read it in Genesis. But when we really look at the geology on the ground, there is no evidence for that. And so what is some of that evidence that people have uncovered that really shows that these floods are actually more localized or regional rather than worldwide? So that's part 1A. Part 1B, write an original flood myth. Okay, so now you're going to have to really get creative. I'd like you to do a little bit of research. I don't care where you go to find this. We're not looking for, peer-reviewed stuff or anything. Just, I want you to find a news report of a flood that happened somewhere in the world within the last 50 years. Now, we know that just in the last 6 months, there have been some pretty serious floods. So you have loads and loads and loads of news reports to choose from. It can be a small flood that caused minimal damage, but let's not just focus on maybe your basement flooding. let's a little bit bigger than that. Maybe community scope at the minimum, or it could be a very large or widespread flood. It can be any cause. So I want you to think about, what is the cause? Is it a hurricane? Is it a dam breaching? Is it, any number of things can actually cause flooding. So I want you to take those details. So location, weather, date and time, type of terrain, damage caused, including loss of structures or life, and I want you to use those as the framework for a short myth that actually is based on those details, but then blends in the mythical details or elements, such as the decisions or actions by supernatural beings, magical interventions, heroic rescues, the the few survivors, okay? Whatever you discern as the elements that are common to flood myths that you can enfold into this actual news story. So it's going to be important that you really have read all of those sample flood myths so you get a feel for how that kind of story unfolds. After you've written your flood myth, please be sure to give it a short original title. And then at the very bottom, I'd like you to include the link for the news story that you used as the inspiration for your myth. And I just want to make a note, this needs to be an actual text, a narrative, not just a bulleted list of items that you create as your myth. Okay? That's due, part 1A and part B are due by the end of the day on Thursday. And then there is a peer response. And so I think this should be really fun for you guys to read each other's flood stories. So please read 3 of your peers' discussion posts and pay attention to how well they blended the supernatural elements with the actual details of the flood. And does it seem to you as if their myth actually captures the essence of the flood myth purpose, which is to cleanse the civilization in preparation for that symbolic rebirth or reset? So respond by telling them the parts of the myth that you think worked well and why. So don't just say, oh, I really liked that, and stop there. You have to give more detail. What did you like about it? What resonated with you? What did you think was extra creative or innovative? And then I want you to offer one suggestion for a supernatural element or detail that could be added to their myth, to make it even more mythical. All right, so that's your work for this week. As I said, don't put that off, because this discussion post actually is going to take a little bit more time than some of the others have. I will be posting the link to the Zoom office hours as part of this announcement if you want to talk to me this week. And by all means, if you have any questions at all about any of the readings or this particular discussion post, please contact me. All right, have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you later.